I have gotten my hands on something absolutely amazing. This is Magnus Carlsen and the Chess Killer, a one-shot comic book that is just absolutely filled with awesome chess puzzles and chess riddles. It is really nicely illustrated, and I'm going to take you through it. This is part one. We will stop at the first interesting chess riddle and talk a little bit about it. This book, you can see it's actually not called Magnus Carlsen and the Chess Killer. It is called Magnus Carlsen or Sjakkmorderen. And that is because this book is only available in Norwegian. And that is also why this video is sponsored by Babbel, the #1 app for learning a new language. And I've been using it to learn a little bit Norwegian, so I would better understand this book, because some of the puzzles here are actually about language. I'm of course cheating a little bit because Danish is quite close to Norwegian, but I've discovered that I can actually now watch Norwegian chess broadcasts, and because they have Magnus Carlsen there, they have like these huge, amazing productions, and it's just so cool to see chess being treated with such respect.
Norsk eller engelsk?
Norsk eller engelsk? If you also want to discover something new in a new language, there is an offer for 65% off a Babbel subscription. Link is in the description, and there is a 20-day money-back guarantee. Okay, Magnus Carlsen and the Chess Killer. You can see him there. Let's see what he is up to. So I'm not going to read this very, very carefully. I will instead suggest you go and buy it for yourself. I'm not sponsored by that. I just bought this thing. But let's see what's going on here. So this is a typical sort of film noir late night crime scene. And we have the badass detective. She's coming to investigate. And the other detectives are making jokes, and it's a bit rough. And there is somebody has been murdered, and lo and behold, they have a pawn in their hand. So her boss, the detective's boss, says that she should try to use unconventional police methods in order to solve this unconventional case, because they have a serial killer. This is the third victim like this. And she very much believes in normal police work, doing the dirty work one day at a time, and we will later learn why that is. But she does what her boss says, and she goes to a simul in Oslo to find somebody who can help her. And who do we find? Magnus Carlsen himself, solving a Rubik's Cube while playing chess against a lot of people. And if you are new to chess, you could think, okay, that is very unrealistic. In fact, it's not unrealistic at all. Magnus Carlsen is very good at chess, to put it mildly. At first, he's not interested in helping, but when she lets go of the information and tells him that all the victims had chess pieces in their hands, and that they really need his help, okay, he says okay. And his manager is unhappy about that, because Magnus is a very busy guy, and he has a lot planned for Magnus that Magnus will now not be able to do. Okay. And here the chess fun really begins. Okay, what's going on here? She briefs Magnus on the victims. The first victim was a peasant with who was found with a white pawn in their hand. The second victim was a librarian who was a farmer on a hobby level. And the third victim was a professional jockey riding a horse. And she alerts Magnus to the particular intersections at Oslo where these victims have been found. Magnus slams down his fist and starts working on the problem. And he is saying that this is a chess game, and it's more particularly chess games between Sjakkmorderen and James Mortimer that was played in 1900, and he draws out this map. But let's see if we can find out how Magnus understood that it was this particular game, the Vienna Gambit. Let's see if we can figure that out. So for the rest of this video, I'll be taking a look at the particular game, and then I will briefly touch upon that game's significance for the case. And that will be it for part 1 of Magnus Carlsen and the Chess Killer. Okay, time for a little bit of movie magic. Okay, a little bit of movie magic there. You, my dear viewer, will be playing the white side. You will be Sjakkmorderen, the legendary Russian grandmaster, one of the first grandmasters of chess, and I will be James Mortimer. This game was played in 1900 in Paris. The game opened with e4, e5, and now knight to c3, knight c6, and now the Vienna Gambit with f4. The gambit was accepted. E takes f4. And in this position, Sjakkmorderen played d4, d4, d4. He played d4, allowing queen to h4 check. And notice that this pawn that you would normally use to block such an early check with such an early queen development, you would usually just play g3, chase the queen away, and be very happy that you won a tempo and you are exploiting the early development of the queen. But in this particular setup, it looks a lot like the Queen's Gambit. The King's Gambit, I mean. Looks a lot like the King's Gambit. In this particular setup, black has a pawn here on f4 and can capture. Like this. This cannot be captured because the rook would hang, and white is in serious trouble. And that is why you, or Sjakkmorderen in this position, played the very odd-looking king to e2, sort of a very early bomb cloud attack going on here. And what's going on? This looks like they are beginners playing early queen development. King is on the run, like straight out of the first few moves. But this is actually a real opening, and this game, even if you analyze it with a computer, and it's a crazy game, so I will encourage you to do so, is actually, when you explore the lines, is very, very accurate. even some of the very strange moves, when you explore them a little further, you can see that they are actually very accurate. Okay, but how did black try to capitalize on this exposed king? Okay, so we want to attack the king. How do we do that the fastest? Well, we play d5, so that when white captures, like so, we now can play bishop to b4 with a check. And let's just take a note of something here. First, somebody lost a white pawn. Then somebody lost a black pawn. Let's just take a mental note of that. What do we do about the check? Well, knight f3. We play knight f3 here to block the check. And here black bravely but correctly castles long, sacrificing this knight, so that d takes c6 is a sacrifice of a black knight. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the story. So this, if you remember, this is what we are talking about. And if you remember the victims, the first was a farmer, the other one was also a farmer, and the last one was a jockey. And here language is a little important, because in Norwegian these are not called pawns, they are called peasants or farmers. So first there was a white farmer that was killed, then there was a black one killed, and it looked like in the story it looked like that the victim was actually like from India something, so maybe that's even intentional, I don't know. And then the jockey, the horse of course. So that is how Magnus was able to figure out that it was this game that these pieces were a reference to. And there is more to that, and I will explore that a little bit deeper at the end of this game, after we have seen how this game ends. We will go back to the story. And here we have a really cool sequence of moves that shows chess as a very concrete game. First there's knight f6, and then this, from Sjakkmorderen side, this very weird looking move, queen to e1, which looks like this whole setup here for white just looks terrible. You have to remember that white is a knight up, so black has given up a significant amount of material in order to obtain this attacking position. And let's see if we can use that information to make sense of what white is doing. Here, this move obviously invites rook to e8 with check, right? Pretty obvious. And there's no way to block this, because we can just capture. There's no, like these moves, these blocking moves, they don't work. So the king has to move. The king can't go here because of the queen. And the king could potentially go here, but we will see that that is not where the king wants to be. Also, the king doesn't want to go back. In fact, the king, and Sjakkmorderen plays the best move, wants to go to d2 here. And what is interesting about this sequence of moves that Sjakkmorderen almost forced here with this queen move is that actually James Mortimer here as black does not have time to capture the queen, because when the king moved out of the pin from the bishop, this knight got freed up to actually capture the queen. So we would see rook takes queen, we would then see knight takes queen. And with the queens off the board, black's attack is no longer dangerous at all, and white would suddenly just be up a knight for no compensation, and black would be losing. So that is why we don't see rook takes queen here. So with no rook takes queen, black instead can play queen h5, getting out of this discovery, this potential attack on the queen, renewing the threat of rook takes queen, so that white now has to react again, play queen f2 here to get out of the line, and black just continues on full speed, developing the bishop, pinning the knight here to the king, and white is under so much pressure. So white needs to get their pieces going and plays bishop to d3. And after this move, we see the rook spring to life with rook to e3. And if you just look at the awesome attacking position that black has going on here, we see the two lobster claws just with the bishop and the other bishop, or even backed up by the queen, just flanking the king. And we have this enormously powerful rook backed up and protected by the pawn just in the middle of white's army, and this knight is quick to find a way to jump in. Maybe this square in particular would be nice, because this knight cannot of course capture because it's pinned by the bishop, and this other rook is also ready to join in the fun. So why on earth did Sjakkmorderen play this? Well, black did give up a knight. So can Sjakkmorderen, can he survive this? If he can, he will be up material and he will have a good game. But he has to defend against this onslaught. Here, Sjakkmorderen first played c takes b, check to the king. The king, interestingly, did not capture this pawn. Why? Well, the king, black just played king b8. And this is because this pawn is not that dangerous at the moment. And it is immortal. It is because white cannot capture their own pieces. So in a way, this is a very strong shield for the king. And you can imagine if the king was here instead, well, then very quickly maybe he could be exposed to an attack. So the king, His Majesty, decides to hide in his castle here, just chill and let his forces do the fighting, trying to stay as far away as possible. But Sjakkmorderen had other ideas. He said, well, I'm not going to let you have all the fun. No, I will also start a little attack of my own. And he played knight to e5. Now, of course, this is a very dangerous move to play, because now this battery of the queen and bishop are opened up, and you can see the possible devastation how they will try and lay waste to white's forces. But you can also see that this knight is very aggressively placed. It has checks here. If this knight moves, it also has a check here, provided this bishop also moves, of course. So, a very interesting game here. Because when the knight moves, Mortimer could, of course, play rook to e2 with a check. And the point is, this knight cannot capture the rook. And if the bishop captures the rook, then this knight can jump in, check to the king, and also Madame ready to capture the queen, because this knight is pinned. So here Sjakkmorderen played the best move, and believe it or not, he has a good position. He played queen takes rook, like that. And of course Mortimer happily captured the queen. It was, the bishop was recaptured by Sjakkmorderen. And now, instead of moving the queen, Mortimer just continued the attack with knight e4 check. Still this knight is pinned, so the king has to move. Bravely, the king goes to d3. Knight check again on f2, forking the king and the rook. And here the king went to c4. Explosive. He went to c4. What a game, what a situation. What is going on here? And Steinitz said, you know, the king is an attacking piece. Use it. This king is getting aggressive. Actually attacking this bishop. This queen is under fire from this bishop. We cannot capture the bishop because now the knight actually defends. Because after the king moved, this knight is no longer pinned. So queen h6. And here we didn't see king takes. We didn't see king takes bishop. Because this does not develop the attack, this rook would also fall in that situation, and white needs to press on with some attack in this position. So no, we didn't see king takes bishop. We saw bishop to f3. Saying, well, this pawn you thought it was a really good shield, black king, but I'm going to make it a prison. Defending it now, and now you can't move. Of course, that is intolerable. This move is now threatening checkmate. That is not a situation you want to be. Fortunately for black, James Mortimer can play c5 here, defending the bishop and also giving some luft, we call it, to create some luft, so that when the knight check comes, the king can go to c7. On c7, the king is also attacking the knight. But here we see that Sjakkmorderen, he was a pretty brilliant player, I must say. And he's famous for a reason. He played bishop. Bishop captures on f4 with check. So that if you now capture the knights, well, then the queen, then you lose the queen. This bishop is not protected though. So Mortimer played queen takes bishop. But knight knight to d5, check to the king, and madame to the queen. And here we see we have reached the clarification stage of this particular chess game. So this is check. Black captures the knight. Situation clarifies now. This knight captures the queen. This knight captures the rook. And this pawn captures this pawn, so that now this very aggressive king is actually threatening this bishop. And we have now reached an end game where black's attack, the checkmating attack, where did it go? And what did white gain by defending in this aggressive manner? White has a very active king, already winning a tempo against his bishop. White has these two amazing pawns, in particular the g-pawn here. The second g-pawn is one square away from becoming a queen. So white is just winning now. But how do you actually execute this? Because, of course, black is not just going to roll over and die. Black played bishop to a5. And did Sjakkmorderen capture the knight? No, of course not. He played b4, attacking the bishop. Bishop went to c7. Still not capturing the knight. No. Rook check. King went back to his original square on e8, and we saw bishop to c6 check, and this was the last move of the game. I know that many of you would like me to play these games out, so black resigned here, and I'm just going to show you the easiest way to convert this winning position into an actual win on the board. If black tries to go forward with the king, you can throw this check that sort of forces black to go back, or just you're just going to lose this bishop. So if you're not trying to go forward, you cannot go here, you can only go here, and here there is a flashy way. It's not actually the technically strongest continuation, but it is winning, it is flashy. I found it myself and I checked it with the computer. It's nice, and it shows how white is just dominating, because the move is rook to d8 check. So if you just move the king, I'm just going to make the queen, and if you capture the rook, well, I am also going to make the queen. This guy is pinned, you are still completely losing, and you should be able to see that, like, there's nothing you can do. I'm going to capture here with checkmate. You can maybe try to hide here or whatever, but I have a queen and a billion pieces, so I'm going to win. And okay, so that's how the game could have ended, and that is the game that the Vienna Gambit that Magnus Carlsen found in the Chess Killer. So it is important to know that he used information about who the victims were, right? Who the victims were. That's important later in the story, because they were like, one rode horses, so that was with the knight, and the other were farmers. Okay, that's with peasants. That's the pawns. Okay, Now let's take a look at how he uses that information. He maps out Oslo, where they live, where he lives, the capital of Norway, as a chessboard, and then he notes where the different victims have been found, so that he can map the coordinates onto Oslo, so that he turns Oslo into a chessboard. And the detective then asks a very good question. What was the next move? And it's knight to f6 in the game. So they are playing with a serial killer, and the next move is going to be knight to f6, so they know where the next murder will take place. Will they be able to prevent it? And who is this mysterious chess killer? I can say that the ending to this is really good. It's really, really good. It's actually a brilliant story. And yeah, I hope you will come back for part two. And I hope I will see you there. Thanks for watching.